Press the button.
Here we go. It's literary as FECK with me, Clive Davis, my regular co-host
Nick.
and down there we have actually one of the original Cambridge spies himself, going under
Indeed.
the alias of
Steve.
There we go. So hello, welcome, Steve. How's it going over there in Moscow?
Yeah, good. Yeah. Clive and Nick, how are you both?
Pretty good, yeah. Can't complain.
So
Good.
Steve is here because he hasn't been on before, and he's on simply because the book in question today, Graham Greene's The Human Factor, I was reading and I was thinking, fuck, Steve would like this book. I just had a feeling, because he likes a good book, but also I think as well as myself, he is ever so slightly obsessed with Cold War in general, but I would say also the whole Cambridge spies thing is kind of fascinating, isn't it? So I thought, I read it and then have him on, because it'd be a good excuse to have him on for the first time.
I don't think there'd be many people that wouldn't be interested in that whole sort of thing. I don't have a deep knowledge of it or anything like that, but I'm happy to be here and to talk about it for sure. But I've got to say, I'm probably one of the worst people to have on a show about this particular book, because I'd never read Graham Greene before. This is the first Graham Greene book I've ever read. I don't read a whole lot of fiction, and despite my father being a Graham Greene, a massive Graham Greene fan, I somehow managed to never pick up a Graham Greene book. So this was the first one I've ever read. The Human Factor is the first time I've read Graham Greene. So
did your old man specifically at all mention The Human Factor or any Graham Greene book in particular he liked?
I'd never heard of The Human Factor. I recall him talking about, the more sort of well-known ones, Our Man in Cuba and a few other ones that had movies made of them and so forth. But he was definitely a big fan, but I'd never picked one up myself. So this was a first.
You're not that well versed in Graham Greene either, you, Nick?
No, I thought that I had read one of his books way back in university, and then when I went through the list of titles, I was like, no, I'm thinking of obviously somebody else. So
Graham Greene didn't write The Hungry Caterpillar, it turns out.
No, he did not. So, which for some reason I was doing at a university course. But yeah,
you were a bit slow. Let's be kind.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Yes.
But this was my first as well. But it's funny, Clive, I think even back in Japan, often expressed an excitement about like tweedy Oxford gentlemen skulking around kind of secondhand bookshops and that whole scene. The more like the less James Bondy, the more kind of grounded sort of version, right? Which this very much is, right? This is pretty far away from the.
Yeah, I mean, I like the James Bond books as well. I just finished reading all of them, the Ian Fleming ones, and they are surprisingly good. But yes, he's a bit too active for these gents. I think they'd be like, oh, sit down, like that Bond fellow. He's
yeah.
What a
I found it funny how James Bond is referenced at least once or maybe twice in the book.
Yeah,
that,
as being
I
not
wasn't
very
sure.
realistic.
Yeah. I found that kind of ballsy in a way.
Well, it's interesting as well because Graham, I feel as if reading. So I've read quite a bit of Graham Greene, and the more I read, the more I like. And this one, but this one really struck me as, because there seems to be a lot of Graham Greenes, and this one was very much a proto John le Carré kind of book. Like reading this, I really felt that, John le Carré, obviously, I suppose in retrospect, but definitely had taken a leaf or two out of Graham Greene's playbook, I think, because it does read in that. It does read in that kind of. What I like, I do like, rather than skiing down a mountain with a machine gun with a hot woman under one arm. I do like the idea of cramped little rooms in back streets in London with men in tweed just drinking tea and laced with whiskey and just keeping secrets and
Yes. Yeah, the thing about Graham Greene, and I knew it coming in, was, or I suspected it, the the writing is just so good.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter if he was writing about, paint dry, watching paint dry, it would still be compelling is not the right word, but just such an easy, fluid read.
Yeah.
I feel like reading Graham Greene, you can almost, switch off and daydream about other things whilst what you're reading just gets plugged straight into your head. The writing is so efficient, so much information is conveyed with the minimal amount of words, and then with the occasional, beautiful flourish. Like he drops a bomb on every page. It's really, really, really something special. Like the last book I read, Clive, which you gave me, was that is it J.J. Ballard?
Yes, High Rise, The
High Rise. Yeah. Now he's a renowned writer, J.J. Ballard, he's well known, written a lot of widely well received books. But every word of that was a challenge, like something I had to chop through. And I'm not a particularly experienced fiction reader, but I had to, really sit myself down and just go through that. And it was a chore, and there was nothing easy about it. And it was fine, but there was very little there that I encountered where I went, oh wow, that's something special. That's an interesting, take on the human experience. It happened probably only once in the entire book. Whereas with Graham Greene, who, I'd never read before, but I kind of knew what I was in for. It was just so, I was absorbing it almost like, as if it was osmosis or something. It's so, it's so beautifully, perfectly, efficiently written. Like I said, it wouldn't matter what he was writing about. I would find it interesting. So to me, the story was secondary. I think I could probably read anything by Graham Greene and enjoy it at the same level as I did The Human Factor. So it was, I really, really, really appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, it's at a level of, like John Steinbeck or something, just this presentation of information that just goes straight into your brain without you even having to sort of think about it.
I think it's because he writes character really well as well, isn't it? Like they're these,
and that's all.
little
and that's all it is. Like I don't even think the story, like the story is nothing really. Not much happens.
Right.
And it's not like something like a Stephen King or a Wilbur Smith, or where there's fucking explosions and monsters and pirates and this happens and that happens. You don't care. That doesn't need to happen with Graham Greene. He's it is just character, and it doesn't matter what they're doing.
No, but the way they do it explains a lot about it. There's like a particular chapter about like this hunt, isn't there? And just the way everyone's relation to the hunt is, and they talk about it, just tells you everything you need to know about these people, right? And it doesn't get in its own way, like you said. It does have the occasional flourish that reminds you that he knows what he's doing, but it is just it's a sophisticated level of writing that few people get to, I think, and he makes it look easy, but
it feels
write like this.
It's effortless.
Yeah.
Right? And reading it is almost effortless in a way, because as you said, Steve, it just kind of seems to wash over you, and you don't have to, you're not working hard. I'm just thinking I highlighted several sections, but just the first two other highlights I have here is this is a conversation with Davis. It's funny, actually, if once you've read the book, and then did you watch the film by any chance? I watched the movie.
Yes. Yeah.
And when watching the movie, suddenly our main
movie
seems like much more of a dick when you know where the story is going, right? I was like, Castle seems like it's really unclear whether he knows that he's throwing Davis under the bus in all of those earlier scenes. But anyway, there's a scene where he's talking to Davis, who's the guy who ends up getting murdered, basically, because he's wrongly assumed to be the leak. And
this is MI6, right? This the Africa division.
Right, and there's a leak apparently, and basically they're coming in to kind of look at it, and then for whatever reason they fixate on Davis, who's the younger he drinks a bit too much and he's a bit lackadaisical. He takes reports out of the office, so he ends up making himself seem guilty, and then it does feel like when you're watching the movie you're like, does he know what he's doing? Because obviously we don't know as readers until the midway point of the book that our main character is the leak. Right? Like that's held back from the reader for a while. But when you watch the movie and you already know that, you're really like, oh shit, does Castle know? Is he deliberately spreading the possibility? Because he says several things that definitely do seem to suggest that Davis could be the source, right? But anyway, the two quotes that I have from quite near the beginning of the book are, this is a conversation between Castle and Davis, and he says, but those awful leftovers, Davis said. The jointery made into shepherd's pie, the dubious meatball. Is it worth it? A married man can't even afford a good port. For some reason I like. And there's this. Buller, who is their dog, who I was glad to see in the movie. I thought for a moment they were gonna skirt around what happens to Buller in the book, but then the movie did.
Yeah, no, that's horrible, isn't it, in the book?
It's so grim.
Demises,
Yeah. But anyway, they first introduced Buller with this line. Buller was licking his private parts with the gusto of an alderman drinking soup.
Yeah.
That's a fucking great line.
Yeah, that is good.
Yeah.
But so the other thing that's worth mentioning as well is, so it was eventually released in 1978, and but apparently he'd been at it for a while, right? Like he tried it and then gave up on it and came back to it. And in the meantime, the Cambridge spies thing had broken, right? We'll talk about this a little bit later, but back then it was just the three of them. It was later Anthony Blunt and that other fellow, but at the time it was Guy Burgess and Kim Philby and what was his name? McLean, right? The other one, Don McLean. And it just seems like Graham Greene claims that it wasn't the Kim Philby story, right? But it's so went down to that thing about having one character in Guy Burgess, like just being much more flamboyantly, seemingly guilty
Mhm.
and then everyone being shocked when Philby went with him, right, to the Soviet Union. It's like, whoa, like I didn't like we had an eye on Guy Burgess, like he looked like a wrong un, but
Mhm.
didn't expect Kim Philby to go along with him, right? And sorry, McLean and Burgess, but then later Philby went, right?
Mhm.
So it's interesting that it all even though it's not, it is almost that Cambridge spies story.
Right. And then Greene knew them, right? Like Greene knew Kim
Yeah, he
Philby.
knew them back during the war, right? Like, but Graham Greene was never a fellow traveler, right? As they put it.
Right.
I don't think. I don't think he joined any of
I,
those.
yeah, I read somewhere that some of them, Graham, said that he used to interact with at least a couple of them. None of them recalled much interaction with him, but I don't know. I mean, the whole thing. I still struggle to really sort of work out what they even did for a job, apart from sit around waiting for telegraph messages,
Right.
and that, like, they really are just sort of lazy, paranoid sleazebags.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah.
Who don't really fulfill any. I understand, nations have to have, intelligence departments, I
Mhm.
guess,
Right.
but none of them really did anything apart from protect their own asses. Like that,
Yes.
what was their day job?
Yeah.
Really nothing.
Yeah.
So the whole
And
thing's kind of weird.
and
Mhm.
soothing the paranoia with, like, huge expense accounts and going to gentlemen's clubs and stuff like that.
yeah. And they're all mad alcoholics, and sort of the whole thing. I mean, it looks great. I would definitely
It looked like fun.
would love to
Yeah.
have
I've
done it.
always quite fancied being a spy. Just not
Yeah.
for any of the James Bond stuff, just for the sitting around in offices getting
Yes.
pissed.
Yeah. Being in the club, just getting
Yeah.
wasted every day.
Have you ever, have either of you, because I never have either of you ever actually been, I'm assuming neither of you have been members, but you never know. Has either of you been as a guest to like a proper gentleman's club, like that goes back, centuries? Have either of you?
I'm Irish, Clive. What? How? That's not going to
Yeah,
happen.
that's true. They wouldn't let you in, you filthy
Yes.
terrorist.
But yeah,
Yes,
no.
I can imagine you outside the Oliver Cromwell club. May I come in? No, back off.
Yeah.
How about
So
you, Steve?
I
Have you
used
ever
to,
been to such an establishment?
no, but I used to go to the press club in Phnom Penh in Cambodia
Okay.
back in 1993, and so it was just when the UN was had been running the country and was holding elections, and it was sort of a pivotal time post sort of Pol Pot.
It sounds
And
very Graham Greene.
it does.
yeah, it does. Yeah. And in those days, so there was the press club, which was situated on the banks of the Mekong River, and it was, and that was how it had been since, I think, the 50s. And you could go, like, there wasn't really any tourism. The whole place was still a total schmozzle, but you could go there, and I went there a number of times, and it was just as a physical sort of place, it was very much like the kinds of
Right.
places that these people would have hung out in. So no, I've never been to any of those sorts of clubs, but I went to that place
It does
in Phnom
sound
Penh
adjacent.
back
I
in the
can
day.
imagine the
Mhm.
vibe being
Yeah.
a little.
And when you went there, you sort of felt like, oh wow, this place hasn't changed in 30 or 40 years, going back to the 50s. And
Did you wear your
it
white
was
suit and Panama hat?
I wasn't I wasn't, I didn't, thankfully, I'm happy to say, go that far, but I did enjoy it. It was a fun sort of very evocative place. So I can imagine what they looked like based on
Yeah,
that. But
yeah.
no, I've never been to any sort of club
Very
like
kind
that.
of seedy end of Empire vibe. It sounds like,
Yeah, it was. That's exactly what it was like. And there
Mhm.
was still a few. There was the occasional. Um, there was still a few sort of American GIs that had been there since the Vietnam War that were
Mm.
running around. Yeah, but no, I haven't really been to anything that did approach what these guys were going to. But
I would love
yeah,
to read. I don't know if anyone knows like. I'd love to read the Soviet equivalent of a book like this. That would be fascinating.
yeah. I feel like they didn't get away with half the shit that our side, were able to get away with. Just the boozy lifestyle,
Yeah.
the almost frat boy.
Mm.
Like these guys are really just, you know, um, doing whatever they wanted, really.
You say that, but I can actually see Putin. That's not hard. That's not a big stretch for me to imagine him in his KGB days as being this and maybe worse, right?
Yeah. Well, his beat
Yeah,
was East Germany
in
was
Germany,
where he was. Yeah.
he was in Germany. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
again, you can imagine the Stasi maybe being at least having a slight more veneer of like pretending to do the right thing or like
I feel like
towing the
it was
line.
very much a British thing to behave in just such a casual way. I feel like the Americans didn't do it. I feel like it's a uniquely, I don't know this, but I just feel like it's a uniquely British thing where the secret services were just these old boys from
Mhm.
the public schools and Oxford and Cambridge and just this giant club where they didn't do anything.
It would it would
Or
be
they did the
it would be boorish and unsophisticated to actually try hard and do anything. That's the whole thing
yes, yeah,
about
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
world, isn't it?
yeah,
Is
yeah. You'd be kicked off the team.
yeah,
You know, what?
a
You're
little
not
bit
a
eager that chap, isn't he? This James Bond.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Exactly. They would hate him.
Oh
They
yeah,
would. He'd be murdered fucking within weeks.
Yeah, he'd
They
be
wouldn't
he'd
stand for any of that.
yeah he'd choke on a bad peanut pretty quick. I mean, he's one
Yes,
of the
right.
best characters in this, and I will say that in the film version, who plays him? That the guy with the eyebrows, he's astonishing.
Derek
Um,
Jacobi.
no, Jacoby plays
Oh, Jacobi is
Jacoby plays
Davis.
Davis. Yeah, no, the guy who
Oh,
plays
Robert
Dr.
Morley.
Joseph.
Robert Morley plays the Doctor.
Oh,
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
I mean, he in the
Robert
book
Morley's always good.
he's all of the scenes of him leering at the
Oh, in
girls
the
in the
strip
strip
club.
club
Yeah,
are just astonishing.
the film is not good,
No,
but
it's not.
and he's definitely
It's
overdoing it, but
Yeah.
it's still a joy, yeah, because everyone else is kind of doing it, but Robert Morley's properly doing the
yeah,
Yeah.
he's really going full Benny Hill kind of.
Yes.
yeah,
So we're all
yeah.
agreed that
He knows it's bad.
the book is actually quite a tremendous read, right? Like I would say it's a bit of a minor espionage classic, actually, I would say.
It probably is. It's a beautiful
Yeah.
read. And when you messaged me and with a link to the film, before I clicked on the link and watched it, I knew the film would be a disaster because when I was reading the book, I was thinking before I even knew that there was a film, I was thinking, wow, this would be impossible to film.
Mhm.
And then you sent through a link to the film, and I just thought, oh my God, who had the balls to
Mhm.
do this? Because this would be incredibly different to film. And then within 10 seconds of it coming on, I just thought, oh my God, they've literally cut and pasted the book,
Yeah.
and now they're filming it. And I didn't get it, because I saw, Otto Preminger,
Right.
he made it. I thought,
His last feature
oh,
film.
it was. Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. It
And then
was
Tom
just
Stoppard as well.
astonishingly bad.
Tom
Tom
Stoppard did
Stoppard
the
screenplay.
adaptation, and again, he's somebody, I mean, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. I mean, he's very highly considered, but yeah, it's
It
not.
was fun. Was terrible,
And some
terrible. Like,
solid
so,
actors as well, for the most part. I mean, Iman is pretty rough, but like the rest of the
was
actors,
that Iman?
that was
She
Dave,
played
that was
Vera.
Mrs. Bowie. Yes.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. She's
not great, but yeah, she certainly looked good.
yes.
I
But
believe the
yeah, the
phrase
whole thing.
statuesque was kind of made for her, really, wasn't it? That
Yes. But the whole thing was just, I mean, I've got examples of it, but they did cut and paste the
Mhm.
book and then just filmed it. And it was, God, it was embarrassing. It was horrible, it really was. But
Iman
not
also in
what
Star Trek 6.
Oh yes, yes.
was it?
She makes out with William Shatner. I remember that. Yeah.
Oh, probably the first interracial kiss, I'm guessing.
No,
TV.
much later on, much later on. That's like this is that in the 80s or 90s. That's one of the movies, not the TV series.
Okay. I
Um,
see. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Jared Jacobi is a great actor. The guy who plays Maurice. Although it sounded like everyone was calling him Morris the entire film. But anyway, Nicole Williamson's very good actor. But yeah,
Richard Attenborough's in there.
yeah. Kept expecting him
In
to
the
sit
last
with
film, he
Jurassic Park.
was in as an actor for a while, right? Like, because then he fucked off and directed
Did
things.
Gandhi and
Yeah. I don't think he was in anything until Jurassic Park, actually.
yes,
After this. No, it's John Gielgud's in there. I mean, John Gielgud's not in it,
Yeah.
much, and he looks quite distracted in his scene. Like, he looks like he's literally just watching the other act and he's thinking about something else entirely. But no, loads of great character actors that you know from a million other things. But yes, to your point, it's just they haven't done anything with it at all, right? They've just kind of somehow thought that it will work, right? Like just to film it.
Well,
And
yeah, what they did was they filmed what the characters said, but they weren't able to film what the characters thought.
yeah,
right.
And I mean, there's just a million examples of it, but right in the beginning when Castle has to go in for that security meeting with Daintree and I think Tomlinson, and Castle at one point, says to, I can't remember if it's Tomlinson or Daintree, but you're going for a shooting weekend. And the guy says, "Oh yes, how did you know that?" And
And he's got the rifle
Castle
behind him there, isn't he? On the
yes, which Castle hadn't seen, but he'd just using his intuition, he'd sort of worked out that that was maybe what was going to happen. And then as soon as he'd said that, he internally says he really regretted saying that because it was better to be inconspicuous and it was better to not have people know how observant and
but in the film it does just play like, he spotted the gun. Yeah.
I just saw the gun. And so there's that whole layer of information that just isn't in the film.
No,
it's just
I suppose I
lame.
understand in a way they thought maybe where if we cast it really well and maybe we'll capture that on film because it is possible. There's some films that do manage to do it. So I appreciate
Yeah.
they tried to do. They went for like a no frills approach and they thought it would show
Mhm.
up on screen, right? But it doesn't, unfortunately, for whatever reason.
Yeah. How did they think that? I mean, you could be right. I just, yeah, it's
I think it's that
I
thing
don't
when you
know.
get to that level,
Arrogant.
there's like an expectancy. So you have Otto Preminger, like I mean, at the end
Mm,
of his day, so he's past his sell by date anyway, but he is Otto Preminger. And then you
yeah,
cast these people, all these great British actors, and it's a Graham
yeah,
Greene and it's Tom Stoppard.
yeah,
I think it's that thing where they just think, oh, how can it not be great,
yeah, yeah.
right?
But it's even shot really
Yeah, it
Yes.
is.
amateurishly, like
Very clunky and it's very stagey looking. Like all of the interiors are overlit, so
Yeah,
people have big shadows up the wall behind
yeah,
them, and it
quite
just
badly lit. Yeah, I was surprised. Again, I
feels
just think they thought,
awkward.
oh, we can just do it straight up and it'll just, it'll just magically appear on screen. And no, and I like when,
yeah,
especially for this kind of thing, like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, the series, for example, I like when they go dingy for this kind of thing because it usually works. But in this case,
right,
it just looks cheap rather
Yes.
than
yeah,
authentic.
yeah,
So yeah, no,
yeah.
it's not a good adaptation, slavishly kind of. The one thing they fucked up a little bit as well was that they couldn't resist. This is a small thing, but I noticed at the end when he's in his apartment in Moscow, they deliberately
Oh,
chose.
the view out the window.
Yeah, 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 and they deliberately chose a
Oh,
building with like fucking cracks in the walls and things. And the thing is, it's something
right.
in the book they were very specific. Graham Greene was very specific about that. Kim Philby had told him right that it was like because and he rewrote like no, it was actually quite nice. They even gave me a shoehorn, right? That was his thing that he said, right? Like all mod cons were there, and that was the one thing. I got my own shoehorn. What a fantastic little detail. But in the film, they couldn't resist making it look, fucked up and like he was in a
Yeah.
decaying kind of Soviet building. Um,
I like the view out the window, which was clearly just a photograph stuck onto the other side of the glass.
yeah,
And of the Red Square, really,
right.
was part of it with the Kremlin, which wasn't described in the book as being like that at all. It was the
Oh,
university or whatever.
yeah. Well, they don't really mention it, and that's something I like. And there's a line they kept for the film, which someone says, "You like it better when the spring comes," right? And I do that. It's a simple line, but it speaks to because for a lot of people it's kind of unfathomable. Like, why did they like? Why would they just chips in all the way and do this, right? And there's that feeling a little bit of you can imagine living in a place like that, like yeah, well, you like it when the spring, when it isn't just fucking horribly frozen and you can't do
Yeah,
anything. It's not
yeah,
too bad here. It's but you got to wait for the spring.
Yeah, there's something a whole. I mean, because obviously I've been an expat more than once in my life, and so there's something that immediately connects with me when I was reading that section of like, oh, I'll show you where the decent bookshop is, and I'll show you where you can get your this and that, and I was like, oh, I remember that first 6 months in Japan and kind of making those connections, and I think how much weirder it would have been in this milieu of like the all these defectors, from yeah, it's just what a weird little. I mean, that would have been a weird group to show up at the Good Day Books for Mark Schilling's.
Right.
You know.
But I'm keen to read. There's a book out recently. Someone's put out a book recently about. There was like a specific hotel, wasn't there, in the Stalinist era that all the expat journalists stayed at. Like all those people who came over and wrote
right.
articles for the Washington Post about how awesome the Soviet system was and stuff like they were all in this same hotel, just basically getting pissed with each other and all swallowing the party line and not going without out a certain radius and
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is kind of fascinating.
Yeah, I guess they were, and because I was, you sort of wonder, like, how did these spies or these guys that became, traitorous ever sort of think, oh yeah, no, it's fine because if things go to shit, I'll just go to Moscow and live there. How did they ever think that would be a good result? I mean, I guess they got implicated when they were really young.
Right.
They were like 20 years old at Cambridge, and they sort of got manipulated into being a double agent. But yeah, just and then I was thinking, well, it's clear that Graham Greene, you can see where his sort of, not his loyalties, but he's an old lefty.
Mm.
Just the way he sort of describes, when someone like Halliday, the bookshop owner, is talking about Moscow and you'll see Moscow. I kind of feel like that's an insight into Graham's own feelings. He is kind of a lefty himself. So I feel like you get these guys, whether they're journalists or whatever, you're going to somewhere like the Soviet Union in the 50s and 60s and just being part of this like expat enclave, whether they're just there for some journalistic work or whatever for a very short period of time, and they're just staying in the hotel that you were talking about,
Right.
and just in this beautiful little enclave,
Yeah.
just boozing every night.
So I don't know if you'd had the chance to see this. Did you have a chance, Nick, to see Philby, Burgess, and McLean?
No, but
Okay.
also I noticed that Claudius Jacobi was in
Eric
that too.
Jacobi's back again. Yeah, this time as Guy Burgess, and he's really good in this. So me and Steve both watched this. Unfortunately, I didn't find out about it in time to send you the link to see it. But yeah, this is as a film, this is much, much, much better than The Human Factor.
Okay.
God, it's so much. Yeah, it was just instantly compelling.
Okay.
It really, was like chalk and cheese.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good. It's from Granada TV. It's from 77. And there's got, Derek Jacobi is also in Human Factor. The main guy who plays Kim Philby, Anthony Bate, later turned up in the Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and Smiley's People miniseries. The guy who plays Donald McLean, Michael Culver, and yeah, really great cast. Philip Stone, like you said, Steve.
Philip Stone,
who was in, oddly enough, he was in a espionage TV series from 1966-67 called The Rat Catchers, which you've probably never heard of because it's classic.
I would watch that.
It's classic, like British TV of the era where it's all been taped over and there's only like one extant episode or something.
Thanks, BBC.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if it's BBC or if it's someone else in this case, but yeah, it's all fucking gone pretty much. Which seems like a shame because I'd love to see an espionage series starring Philip Stone.
Yes.
And yeah, a lot of other interesting people. Peter Vaughan's in it as well. I'm a big fan of Peter Vaughan. He's great. But so this was made.
It's a dramatization of the actual events then.
Yes, but it's in those days it was just a Cambridge trio, right? So it was Philby, Burgess, McLean, and they yet to have found out about Anthony Blunt, right? And who's the other guy? John Kang Koro or something like that. Because there's 5 of them eventually, right? But at this point they only knew about those 3. So it's slightly dated in that respect. But other than that, I mean, yeah, it's pretty fucking good. Directed by Gordon Fleming, who mostly made TV, but also made those 2 Peter Cushing as Doctor Who films in the 60s.
Oh, shit. Okay. All right.
And written by a guy called Ian Curtiz, who also wrote another TV movie The Atom Spies in 1979, which I guess is a little bit of a kind of precursor to this story. Right? So, and I found it on, you know, that what's it called? There's that Russian YouTube channel like OK or something, right? And you can find this obscurest shit on there. And I found a copy. It's up on there, so I'm gonna watch it to see how it compares. But no, but this is no, this is the film to watch. I think if you're after a film. I mean, there's lots of films about this. There's a few TV. Dennis Potter wrote a couple of plays, right, as well, I think, about this in general. But yeah, Philby, Burgess and McLean. It was pretty good, wasn't it, Steve?
It was good, and in comparison to the Graham Greene TV adaptation, it was, you know, cinematic genius. It's just amazing how bad that Graham Greene was. It really is surprising, though. You know, how did they think they were doing anything of any worth after, you know, a couple of days into filming, and they would have been looking at it, and how was anyone satisfied? It's quite mysterious how it was allowed to slip through being so terrible. And given that, you know,
they're not picking up on Steve's subtle hints, he didn't like the human factor film.
It's funny.
Could have been a bit more obvious.
We haven't really talked about. There's a few elements of the book that, I mean, ultimately it's a really sad book when you get right down to it. Like there's an element.
It's got a melancholy, isn't it?
It's really tragic, kind of, because one of the things is, right, Castle isn't actually a communist. He's not a fellow traveler. Basically, his involvement in kind of falling. Basically, there's a great liner that basically says, like, every man in love is like an anarchist holding a bomb, or something along those lines, right? It's like in The Secret Agent by Joseph Conrad, they're like walking around like strapped with a bomb. And there was something real about that the idea that, like, this is a guy who has basically betrayed his country for his family, and in the process fucking loses his family.
So specifically he's interested in Africa not being carved up by the United States and the Brits, right? So he thinks the Soviets have a more kind of he's more sympathetic to the Soviet approach there, right?
Right.
And I'm wondering, I suppose, a contemporary version of this story now would be maybe, I don't know enough about it, but I'm wondering if some people have a sympathetic take on, China's Belt and Road Initiative in Africa, for example. Like, obviously they're going to get a lot out of it, but they seem to be offering a lot more to Africa
than the colonial powers have. Yeah.
So you do wonder if anyone else is in a similar situation where it's like, well, everything else I don't buy your thing, but in this one instance, I think you're doing good in the world, and therefore I shall join your cause just for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then, yeah, of course, once the secret is out, there's no one's interested in the nuance that Castle is only doing this for, he's just labeled a commie, right? He's just
because he's not. He doesn't have any rose-tinted glasses. He doesn't want to go to Moscow. It's never been a dream of his, right? Like there's no element of it that's appealing to him. And then the joke is the final joke being that when he gets there, he realizes all the espionage he's been involved in has been bullshit, basically. Anyway, that it's been echoed back to right, like everything about it is just so depressing and sad.
Yes.
It's amazing. It's amazing writing. And then obviously apartheid features fairly heavily in the book as well, right? I mean, him basically having to. This is why he's gotten involved with the communists, was smuggling his future wife out of South Africa.
No, I'm very keen to read more Graham Greene now. Like I said,
it's a stupid question, really, but how does it compare to other Graham Greene pieces that you've
well,
read?
I hadn't read anything else quite like so, because obviously he has a long writing career, and I think the closest to this that I'd previously read was The Quiet American, right, which is the
Right.
setting is Vietnam, right,
Mm.
which is also a good read, and similarly kind of has this, yeah, this very kind of melancholy, you know,
Right.
and also that mix of kind of a love story in there with the espionage and stuff as well, and a very personal human story playing out against this kind of backdrop. But the thing that confuses me about Graham Greene is, so he was famous for like writing one for them, one for me, right? He was like, he'd write what he was called his entertainments, and then he would write like a book he thought was more important. And I read the only one of his books I knew that I read that was a entertainment was this one called Ministry of Fear, which is a good kind of spy book as well. More of a kind of Hitchcock wrong man kind of story that was turned into a Fritz Lang film, I think. And that was good. And the thing is, I can't distinguish between them because they're all good. They're all well written, the ones I've written. So I can't tell when he thinks he's doing something important and when he's not. Like it's all just really great writing. So I'd quite like to read some more. There's a lot of his shorts. So famously as well, the classic film made out of one of his books is The Third Man, right? The Carol Reed movie with Orson Welles, which is a phenomenal film. I love that film. I'm assuming you both must have seen Third Man.
Yeah, that may be what I was thinking. What I thought I knew Graham Greene is probably The Third Man.
But just a year prior, the same team made another film called The Fallen Idol. It's Carol Reed again, and it's based on a Graham Greene short story, and Graham Greene worked on it. So I'm very keen to see that because that might be another classic. But yeah, I'm basically on course to read all his stuff eventually. But I'd really like to. I've never read any of his nonfiction because he was a journalist as well, right?
Yes.
And he wrote several volumes of his autobiography as well. So I'm guessing that stuff must be pretty fascinating. So
I don't think there'd be anything that he has written that wouldn't be, excellent.
Mm-hmm.
I very, very much doubt. What was the difference? Can you put your finger on, why was it that the third, the Orson Welles production of the Graham Greene novel that was so much more watchable? Why was it better than The Human Factor? Clive, can you put your finger on it?
well, for a start, it's a much more. We talked about how kind of drab Human Factor looked, maybe by design, but it just doesn't work. Whereas The Third Man is it's all these post-war Viennese locations like bombed, and it's shot beautifully. And so it just looks. It's like a real cinematic. It looks amazing in black and white and stuff, and then you have that fantastic music, the zither theme tune, and just everything about it. It's just classic the Carol Reed movie. Yeah, and I suppose that Carol Reed at the height of his powers as Otto Preminger, like
well past
right?
time.
Kind of,
yeah, it's the amateurish. It's really the amateurishness.
It's surprisingly. I mean, it's Otto Preminger, the guy who made like Anatomy of a Murder and like all these classic noir films that would have looked amazing in the way that The Third Man did. But yeah, it's just like seems like it just is no one. Well, I'm not saying they don't give a shit, but the end result just doesn't.
Because even the sound is like awful. Like, I mean, there's parts where people are talking and, suddenly the sound quality changes drastically.
It is odd.
Quality. Like, it seems really badly made, badly put together.
I think sometimes
filmmakers. I just felt like it was a student film when I first,
I think some filmmakers just don't fit with time periods, I guess. I suppose by the time the 70s rolled around, they're making films in a different way, and if you don't know how to do things in that way, so Otto Preminger's heyday was like 40s and 50s, right? So clearly he's just a Hollywood dinosaur at this point. I mean, a few years before Human Factor, of course, he famously makes that movie Skidoo, right? Which is that kind of like a wacky comedy about LSD, and it's directed by a very old man who doesn't know anything about hippies or LSD or anything. And Skidoo is famously just like, this film is just wrong. Like, these people don't know anything. So yeah, I think that's just what it is. Wrong person, the wrong time, right? But Philby, Burgess and McLean, I recommend, Nick, that you see it, because it is very, very good. Right then, so there we go. We've come to the end of our time, I think. Stephen, how was your first podcasting experience? Was it everything you dreamed it would be?
I think it probably was.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. How's that? No, it was good. I actually really wasn't sure that I was going to have much to say, just because having not read any Graham Greene, and just being not really a fiction sort of reader much in my entire life. But no, enjoyed it. Thank you both, Nick and Clive. It was it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had a feeling you would. Most people, I think, even if they don't think they have anything to say, if it's because I knew you would warm to the subject, and we've discussed this stuff a little bit before when we're out on the streets in our cups. So I knew you'd have a take on it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And it was really good that you sent through the movie, and we were able to sort of contrast how shitty that was compared to the book. So
once again, Steve, get off the fence. Tell us how you really feel about the film.
Yeah, pick a side, man.
All right, there we go. You never know. Steve may pop up again. He has he's welcome anytime to talk.
Open invitation.
Films, books, or comics or something. So right, I'm going to stop recording now. Cheerio.
All right. See ya.